the Aces Optimist Show with your host, Dr. Craig Morris.
Hi, everybody. Dr. Craig Morris here. Welcome to Aces Optimists, where we are dedicated to optimizing human potential in the clinic of life. We've had so many interesting guests on the show to date, all showing and being prime examples of excellence through life, showing in the results and the success of their lifetimes. Today is another perfect example of this. Today, we have a gentleman who, in my mind, I've thought for a long time, I simply think of as Dr. Texas. We met 30 years ago, and he has an amazing story to tell, and it's a great example of excellence through life and great success. So I'd like to welcome to the show Dr. Dale White.
Hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
So we met about 30 years ago, it turns out, along the way, when we were invited to be on a committee to form an insurance company through the chiropractors. Most will know about NCNC, National Chiropractic Mutual Insurance Company. And we got a chance to work together to help to form the medical committee and the standards for an insurance company. You remember well?
I do remember well. Louis Fortelli put that thing together for NCMIC, and he had guys from all across the spectrum. He had guys that worked for insurance companies, guys that were educators, et cetera, et cetera. He called me because I was the political guy. I was the guy that worked in legislation for chiropractic in Texas, and he knew me because of that, and he wanted me to be on there for that, for that end of it. And of course, Triad Healthcare was the name of it. And what it was mainly to do is for us to help set up a managed care company for chiropractors to work with the insurance industry.
Yeah, exactly right. And as we got to know each other, I found I had a colleague there with an amazing background that didn't start in chiropractic, ended up in chiropractic, but you didn't start. We've already had a couple of former professional athletes on our Aces Optimist podcasts. Yours is a very interesting story with your background in golf. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I, of course, played college golf at North Texas State University. It's in Denton, Texas. I had a scholarship there and played golf for 4 years. And after school, and I majored in biology because I was always going to be a doctor. That was my ultimate plan. And after school, I got a chance to go play on the PGA Tour, and I started out in Europe. And our next door neighbor, when I was growing up, had watched me. I grew up on a ranch in Texas, and I learned how to hit golf balls in the front pasture of the house. And he had the ranch next door, and he owned a company called Tech Chemical. He's still alive. And back then they canned all kinds of chemicals, but mainly Freon. He was a big Freon guy. And he was into racehorses, had lots of racehorses. An interesting sidebar is when Evel Knievel jumped the Snake Canyon, he's the guy that fronted the money for that. He was the producer of that thing. So he came over one day and asked me, leaning over the fence between the two ranches, he said he'd been watching me grow up hitting golf balls and wanted to know if I'd ever considered playing the PGA Tour. And I said, well, of course, my whole life it's been a dream. And he said, we'll come over tomorrow. We'll talk about it. So that's what I did. And the rest is history. I went over and played in Europe first, played over there, and then played some tournaments over here. But and enjoyed it very well and was successful at it. Wasn't a household name. I never won, but I made enough money to stay out there. But I was over playing in the German Open, which was right after the British Open, and In the morning of the second round, I'm walking down the stairs in the hotel and I slipped and fell. And my legs came right out from under me. And I actually was 2 or 3 steps from the bottom and landed in the lobby right on my tailbone. And hit so hard, my nose started bleeding and I didn't hit my head. And got up. You could buy very strong drugs across the counter in Europe at that time at a pharmacy without a prescription. So I went by a pharmacy and got some, went to the golf course, played golf, had a really hard time. I shot 65 in the first round, shot 78 in the second round, and which might be the best round of golf I ever played because it really hurt. So afterwards, I came back into the clubhouse and told they have a desk always in tournaments to help the players. And I walked up to the desk and I said, I'd hurt my back, and is there a doctor I could see? And they said, well, interestingly enough, we have a orthopedic surgeon that's in the bar right there, that's a member here. So I walked in there and walked up to him and told him what was going on. And he said, let's go to my clinic. And his clinic was in a hospital that was about 3 blocks down the street. So we went in there. They took x-rays. This is way before MRIs. They didn't even exist. So he took x-rays, comes back in and he says, well, you've hurt your back bad enough. You need back surgery. And I said, well, in the early 70s, back surgery meant your golf career was over. So I said, okay, I'm out of here. I went back, withdrew from the tournament, got on an airplane, flew back here. And back then, you couldn't fly straight to Dallas from Europe. So I flew from Dusseldorf, Germany, which is where I was, to London, and then London to New York on Pan Am. That, again, is how long ago it was. And then flew Delta back to Dallas. And the reason Delta is important, my dad was a Delta pilot, so I could fly Delta for free. We went, then the next day I went to see a family friend who was a general surgeon here in Fort Worth. And he put me through the same tests and everything. He said, you need back surgery. And I said, well, that's not going to work. So I went back out to my parents because at the time I actually lived in England. I lived in Portsmouth, England, because I was playing the European Tour and that was the hub over there.
Yeah.
So about 2 days later, I'm sleeping in my old room that I grew up in my parents' house, trying to figure out what to do. My mother walks in and says, get up, I'm going to take you to my chiropractor. And I'd never been to a chiropractor.
Yep.
And I said, I don't want to go to a chiropractor. And she said, get up and get ready. You're going. Well, it was my mom. So what am I going to do?
Do what she says. What you're going to do.
I did what she said.
Yep.
I go to see her chiropractor, who was named Frank Doyle. One heck of a chiropractor. Best adjuster I've ever known in my life. Went to see him. He examines me, x-rays me, looks at him, says, okay, I see where your problem is. Lay down on the table. So I laid down on the table. And remember, I'd never had an adjustment. He adjusts me, and he was very, very rough, very violent adjuster. And he adjusts me, and the first thing I do is move my toes to make sure they're still working. I really did that. And he says, okay, go ahead and get up. So I get up and he says, all right, I think that probably got it. If it's still bothering you, come back tomorrow. And I'm walking out the door and I'm thinking to myself, what just happened? I have no idea, because he didn't explain anything he was doing. And he was so busy. This is how busy he was. Now remember, this is before insurance covered anything in chiropractic. He was totally cash because you had no choice. Everybody was cash.
Was this around 1975?
This would be 1975, yeah, early 75. So he walks, his patients would walk in the front door, check in, go back to get adjusted, and go out the back door, and there was a person at the back door to collect the money. His clinic was narrow and long, and he didn't have room for patients coming back and forth. So it was like a conveyor belt going through there. And he saw probably 100 patients a day. That's how busy he was. All right. So I get in the car with my mother, drive back to the place. It was about a 45-minute drive because we were out in the country. And by the time I get back there, I get out of the car and my back doesn't hurt. I had trouble getting in the car and I could get out without it hurting. I didn't even have my golf clubs. I left them in Europe with another player that took them back to the house. There were 4 guys that shared the house. And so I go in and get one of my dad's golf clubs and go out in the pasture and start hitting golf balls. And I cannot make this thing hurt. I can't make it hurt. It's like a miracle, right? We all have had patients like that.
Yep.
They all expect it, but it happens every once in a while. It doesn't happen that often. So I hit balls for probably an hour, go back in. I went back out a couple hours later, same thing. Can't sleep at all that night because I cannot quit thinking about what just happened to me. What did he do? So the next morning I called his office and I said, I want to come in and see Dr. Doyle. Does your back still hurt? No. I feel great. I want to come and talk to him. So I go in and they said, be here at noon. So I get there at noon. They put me in this private office. I'm sitting in there waiting on him. He comes in. So what's going on? I said, well, I don't hurt at all. And I want to know what you did to me. I want to know what you did. I had 2 surgeons on 2 continents tell me I needed back surgery. And you did this, and I have absolutely no pain, no soreness, no stiffness, no anything. And he says, well, I did, he explained to me what was going on, told me I had a retrolesthesis on L5, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And told me what he did and how I did it. And for some unknown reason, I still don't know why I said these words. I said, where do you go to school to be a chiropractor? I've never heard of any chiropractic schools. He says, well, we have one in Texas and it's in Houston. It's called Texas Chiropractic College. It's been there since 1905. Who knew? I didn't know. And then about 2 seconds later, he goes, would you like to see the school? And I said, sure. And he picks up the phone and he calls the president of the school down there then, who was W.D. Harper, president then. And he calls the school down there and he's talking to him. He says, okay, he'll be there tomorrow. And then he looks at me and goes, you can go tomorrow, can't you? And I said, sure. So he hung the phone up. And again, I still don't know why I said all these things. So this is who he was. He stands up, reaches in his pocket, and pulls out money. He's fixing to hand me $300 or $400, and I go, "Oh, I've got money. Thank you." So I drove down to Houston, which is about a 5-hour drive. I drove down to Houston the next day, got a tour of the school, and when they started, and back then we went to semesters. We were 4 years long, school was. And we did 2 semesters and then a summer session. So we did three semesters a year.
Right.
You did the same thing, I'm sure.
Yep.
And I started in the next class. I was in the next class, and I had to call my backer and get out of my contract with him. And he probably asked me 20 times, "Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this?" I said, "Yes, I am." And I mean, I'm a big believer in fate. I think I was supposed to fall down those stairs. I think my mother was supposed to take me to see Dr. Doyle, who she went to forever. And I mean, it's just, it's amazing. That's how I got in the profession.
Thank you so much, Doc. Are you an NHL fan? Would you like to be? Well, I'm Kevin Weeks, former NHL goaltender, current NHL analyst on ESPN, the NHL Network. And I've got an outstanding new podcast for you. Whether you're a diehard hockey fan, a casual hockey fan, or potentially a new hockey fan, be sure to check us out at Patreon at The Inside Edge. You'll find us there. We've got a lot of great interviews, one-on-ones, exclusives with a lot of people around the game, from coaches to general managers to players to agents, and we'll take you inside the game and behind the scenes. Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks so much.
And then because of him and other people that were close to him, I was taught immediately that you get involved when you get out of school. You get involved in your state and national associations, and you work to help the profession. And
so that takes us then, you start up a practice. Once you got into practice in Fort Worth, Texas,
Yes.
at the River Oaks Chiropractic Clinic, which has been around now for 46 years.
Yeah.
And then you started to also become active politically in the profession to help to
Yes.
promote it, support it, and grow it. And so when we met back in 1996, by that time you were already a past president of
Yeah.
the
I had,
association.
well, actually, when we met in 96, I was still president of the Texas Association. I
Okay.
did 2 terms from 95 through 97. So they're 1 year terms. So I did 2 terms as president. So I was actually still president when we first met of the state association.
Got it.
And then after that, for 8 sessions in Texas, we have legislative sessions every other year. Thank goodness. If they were in session all the time, it would be, 10 times harder. But only every other year we have to worry about them, screwing things up, which is what they like to do. And, and anybody that watches politicians, they know that. So I worked 8 sessions after that as legislative coordinator for the Texas Association. So that's 16 more years doing that.
Okay. And you still continue to play golf, right?
Oh, yeah. I play amateur golf. As a matter of fact, I'm leaving Saturday to go to North Carolina and play in a Society of Seniors, which is a Society of Seniors is a group of senior golfers from around the world that you have to meet certain criteria to get into it. Obviously, it's full of old tour players. It's full of, USAM champs, British amateur champs, et cetera, et cetera. And it's kind of like old home week. It's the same guys I played college golf with and against and played on the tour with and against. And, we're all too old to do that anymore or, are not good enough to do that anymore, obviously. But we are good enough to play senior amateur golf against each other. And we have fun, in the old days, we'd play golf and we'd go out chasing girls, right? When we were younger. And now that we're older, we go out and play golf and then we all go to dinner early, like about 6 o'clock. And then we go back to the hotel and watch TV.
Yeah, it's changing.
That's what we do now.
It's so then you, in addition to your political work for the profession in Texas, you started working with the American Chiropractic Association. You became a delegate to the world body, the World Federation of Chiropractic.
I did.
And and how long did you work with the World Federation?
I did 1 term. I was the ACA appointee. I'm still an ACA delegate from Texas, West Texas. Texas has 2 delegates, East Texas, West Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been an ACA delegate for 15, 16 years, something like that. Whenever Glenn Manso was president of the ACA, he is when I went on because he was president. I got elected in Texas and went, and that's why I ran, because I wanted to work with him.
And this is Dr. Glenn Manso out of Louisiana, who was also
Correct.
on that same board with us with Triad Insurance.
He was on the QIC committee too.
Yes,
he was.
Yes.
And I actually knew Glenn from before that.
Mm-hmm.
But from my work in Texas, he was doing the same thing in Louisiana I was doing in Texas.
Yes.
So obviously states touch each other. We had some things that we did together. Quite a guy, great. I knew he would be a great president. I wanted to work with him, and he got a lot done for the profession when he was ACA president. But when I was on there, he appointed me to the legislative committee on ACA, which I'm still on. I've been on it the whole time, and I'm actually vice chairman of that. We have a great chairman of that committee now.
Tell me about your experience with the World Federation.
Well, the World Federation is amazing. I knew a little bit about it before I was appointed, just in passing through things that happened in the ACA, and I'm actually a little ashamed of myself that I didn't know more. The World Federation is an unbelievable organization. Its goal and purpose is to spread chiropractic worldwide, but to spread it in a proper manner, to spread it through helping the individual countries pass legislation, chiropractic legislation, licensing acts, so
Yeah.
that the chiropractors can be licensed in all the countries,
Yes.
and to help them to do that, and chiropractic education worldwide. So the
I
goal is unbelievable, and it's I don't know, one of the most important things out there for the profession, in my opinion. And they do a great job, and it's a great group of people.
I was involved with them for almost 30 years. Because I started in a chiropractic association in Central Europe,
Yes.
uh, with the Slovak Chiropractic Association. We did all those years ago, and so I was a delegate for many years, and then I would go and teach rehabilitation courses and organize those for our semi-annual conferences that we would have. So, I everything you've just said is 100% correct. Absolutely great organization. In fact, a few months ago we had the president, Dr. Kendra De Silva, who was a DNS student of mine uh, and a longtime friend on, and we enjoyed having her on ACES Optimus also. And it is absolutely fantastic organization, and those that are in the chiropractic profession should know about it, should learn more and find any way they can to be a part of it, to go to the conferences and start to understand what a great profession and growing profession we are internationally, and it's all spearheaded through the WFC.
Yes. And you can also be, an individual member of the WFC
Yeah,
and pay dues, and it's not expensive. But the WFC obviously needs the money, because it takes money to do everything.
that's right.
So you can be an individual member, and we have many individual members. And,
Mm.
technically, I'm still on the board until June when they meet again. The ACA asked me if I wanted to be reappointed, and I said, guys, I'm almost 75 years old, and traveling the world, it takes a lot out of me. And I think that we need to have someone else replace me this next time. And Dr. Rob Jones from Albuquerque, New Mexico, is going to take
Yep.
my place. He's past ACA president.
Yes.
Very, very good guy. Runs a fantastic integrated clinic in Albuquerque that I've actually visited a couple of times. He has everything there, and he's going to do a very, very good job.
I've spoken with them, and I 100% agree. They have a great. If they're gonna have a replacement, he's the guy. I think it's a great.
You're doing a great job. I agree.
So let's talk about then this chronology. You were a professional athlete, a golfer. Then you became a chiropractor, started your own clinic, worked your way up politically to help to promote the profession. Then worked your way up to become the president of the association. And I'm sure, knowing your personality, it wasn't you pushing for it, that you were pushed into it and asked to do that, because you are always showing leadership capacity and enthusiasm and the professionalism we need in our leadership. And the same thing that and same then held true as you started to work even on a higher level for our whole global body. I think it's interesting when we talk about excellence, how it's a habit and how we continue to grow. And very often, I think we put our own restraints on. I mentioned in my textbook that very often the greatest restraints in life are self-imposed. But we see you are in practice for 39 years, and all of a sudden you decide to grow and open up a second clinic. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my son practicing with me had a lot to do with that. My son and his wife both practice with me. He's a Parker grad. He's been here, I think, 11 years now. And his wife, they met at a seminar. She's a Canadian Memorial graduate. She's a Canadian, but she has her American citizenship now, so she has dual citizenship. But for their future, and I've always been interested in the integrative approach. And we were prohibited from doing that in Texas because of the Texas Medical Association for many years. And my son was legislative chairman of the Texas Association, and he got the law passed and amended to where medical doctors and chiropractors could partner together. Okay, we were the only profession in Texas, or a medical profession, that could not partner with medical doctors. And it's because the Texas Medical Association wanted it that way.
Yes.
Because, they want to keep everybody else downtrodden if they can, right? And they are the largest medical association in the country. They're bigger than the AMA.
Wow.
There are 80,000 doctors of osteopaths or medical doctors in Texas, around 80,000. They must be a member of the state association by statute to buy malpractice insurance. So they're all members.
Wow.
So they have millions and millions and millions of dollars. And they use that money to keep everybody else under their thumb. For instance, nurse practitioners don't have autonomy here. They have to have a medical doctor looking over their shoulder. They don't have to be in the building, but they have to review X amount of files a month, et cetera, et cetera. PTs don't have open access here. They can only accept patients by referral from MD, DO, or chiropractor. This is all because of Texas Medical Association.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really all about money. They always claim it's about patient safety. But as you know, and I've used this many times testifying before the legislature, that, my malpractice premiums for $3 million, $1 million are $2,500 a year. And my primary care guy down the street is, about $10,000 a month. So you tell me who's dangerous. So, that's what happens. So anyway, because my son got the in his legislative committee, and the Texas Chiropractic Association got the law changed, we could do it. So then I immediately went out and did it. And before I did it, I went to different clinics and I had to go to different states. I went to different clinics that ran integrative clinics to learn all I could do. Rob Jones's clinic being one of them. And they taught me what to do. And of course, some things you have to learn on your own. But I opened this integrative practice, and what we have is we have a chiropractor there. We have, obviously, you're always going to have a chiropractor there. And we have a nurse practitioner, family practice nurse practitioner. And our medical director is a neurologist. Now, he's a guy that I've known for over 30 years. He's a good friend, and he's not on site. We do refer patients to him when need be at his clinic, but he has to oversee everything the nurse practitioner does because that's Texas law. But we do all kinds of stuff over there. We do joint injections, trigger point injections, regular family practice, obviously chiropractic. She does a lot of bioidentical hormones, which are absolutely fantastic.
Yes.
Much better than the chemical hormones that they do.
Yes.
And it's really nice to have the true integrated clinic. And of course, we refer our patients over there as need be to see her. The way we have the thing structured, the doctors of any type can move back and forth, except the nurse practitioner stays there all the time because that's where all her supplies are and her facilities that she needs to do what she does.
Fantastic. And that's been 7 years now. I think we
real close to 7 years.
Wow. So this is a great expansion, and it's been a great experience, it sounds like, for you.
It's been very good. I think we should always do, as I know you do too, Craig, because I know you well. And I believe we should do what's best for the patient, no matter what that is. And most of the time we can help them without any type of drugs or surgery, but sometimes they're too far gone. But that doesn't mean that we still can't work together, even getting them through that and after the surgery or the drugs. And It's what's best for the patient. And our job is to explain when we see a patient, we examine a patient, to sit down with them and explain to them what we believe is the best form of treatment for them and how they should do it. And obviously, the decision is up to them. Our job is to advise them on what we think is the best.
Right.
And if we need a second opinion, we send them out for a second opinion. Or
They
if
need
we need an MRI or whatever, we do that.
They need to know their options
Exactly.
and what we recommend of those options. It's our
Exactly.
job. This is our job.
Exactly.
Because then
That's
they
our
make
job.
informed decisions. Because we've seen too many patients over the decades who said, well, I wish I'd have known that before. I wish I'd have known that was an option. I wish I would have come here before, but I didn't even understand how you could help me. The same thing.
Just go back into my own life. I
Yes.
didn't know anything about chiropractic.
Yes.
And where did I originally go? I originally went to the orthopedic surgeons
Yes.
because that's where I was taught on television and the radio and newspapers where you go, right?
Yeah.
And it was wrong.
We just recently had Dr. Kambiz Hanani, who wrote the spine surgery chapter in my textbook on, and we talked exactly about that and our roles working together and when surgery is appropriate and when it's not. And he works with many chiropractors and physical therapists, and he integrates it. And then he takes those cases when there's nothing else that's going to work. As I've said for years, my job is to try to keep my patients out of the surgery room, out of the operating room. But every now and then I can't. And when I can't, I thank God for having them available.
Exactly. I'll give you really just kind of an off the cuff example of that on myself again. I have a left knee replaced. My left knee was replaced in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
It was completely degenerated. I injured it originally in high school playing basketball. And then all those years of playing golf, twisting on that left knee, you've seen golfers swing. It put a tremendous amount of pressure on the left knee. And millions of times that I did that probably. And obviously arthritis developed, et cetera, et cetera. And, back when I injured it, it's rub dirt on it. And I'm on crutches for 3 days and you're back playing again, right? Should it have been manipulated? Of course. Should I have had therapy? Of course. But that's not what happened because we went the medical route with the medical doctor on the team medical doctor. So, and I paid for it later. But without the availability to that knee replacement and that surgery, I'd be on crutches or in a wheelchair right now. I wouldn't be playing golf. I mean, there's no way I could walk the way it was. When I got it done, I probably got the surgery about 6 months too late. And when it starts degenerating, it goes really fast at the end. And it was because the surgeon that I wanted to do it he was out on disability. He had injured his back and had back surgery. So I wanted to wait on him because he was the best there was in town. And I'm glad I did because, we're 13 years later and like I said, I'm almost 75 years old and the only part of my body that doesn't hurt is my left knee that's been replaced.
Well, so then this is quite a story. I'd like to think that every chiropractor in the world would listen to this and listen to your story because it's really very, very inspirational. And it's a story of challenges and of adaptability and continued growth. What do you attribute your inspiration and what I would consider very obvious levels of excellent success? Very often it starts early. So who do you give thanks to and who are mentors or examples for you?
Well, in my life, my parents, I had very, very good parents. They were, and I know a lot of people say that, but mine were special. I had a father that could do anything. If he didn't know how to do it, he would teach himself how to do it at a very, very high level. He played on big dance bands prior to World War II, flew B-17s in World War II. After that, he went to work for Delta Airlines and retired with Delta Airlines. he lived to be 93, and he was active right up to the end. And my mother she drove me to golf tournaments. She was a fantastic mother. We had a stay-at-home mother. My mom didn't work. My dad, made enough money where she didn't have to. And we had a good life. And as a child, and whether you have money or don't have money, I don't think you know it when you're a kid. As long as you have food and a place to sleep, I think you're happy. If your parents are happy, you are. And then I was lucky enough that once I got into the profession to have some fantastic mentors. Dr. Frank Doyle gave me my first adjustment. Clay Salyer, who was past president of the state association here. Louis Sportelli was a mentor. And some really, really good friends that thought the same way, that I did about we owe it to the profession. We owe it to the future of the profession, and we owe it to our patients and the future patients to advance this profession to where it should be. I believe, as I know you do, Craig, we should do whatever we're trained to do and whatever the state laws allow us to do. And if we think that the state laws should be changed to be expanded a little, we should work to do that. Because again, our ultimate thing is not for us. It's for the patient, and it's for the profession. It's, everything that I've ever done, I've not done for the greater glory of myself. I've done it for the profession. And now I even have extra added stuff. Now anything I do for my son and his wife, and they have two sons, and hopefully one of them takes over from them, or maybe both of them, you never know.
100%. My son's a chiropractor also, and I feel exactly the same way.
And luckily we have a large number of chiropractors that feel this way, and it's more important in our profession than any other healthcare profession, with maybe the exception of physical therapists, because they kind of, they're sort of treated as second-class citizens also. And maybe even nurse practitioners are too, but not in all states. But in our profession, we've always been treated that way. I remember when I decided I was going to go to chiropractic college, I had people tell me, I'm talking about medical doctor friends that I'd known through golf, that told me, you're going to be treated as a second-class doctor your entire life. And I said, well, it's going to be my job to change that. And I actually said that. And I meant it. And I love that there's more people in chiropractic now than ever before. I'm talking about chiropractors. I love that there's more students in chiropractic colleges now than ever before, to expand the profession. We need probably 10 times the chiropractors we have out here practicing to take care of the public. And those chiropractors need to know that they need to get involved in their state and local associations, because the best example I've ever heard of is, you can be the greatest doctor in the world, but if nobody knows who you are, it's like practicing in a closet. Well, take that to the profession as a whole. If the whole country doesn't know about us, how are they going to walk in your office? And the only thing that gets the word out there are the associations, because because the word has to come from, in this case, in Texas, it has to come out of Austin, Texas. It has to come out of the legislature. And every time that legislature meets, our enemies are down there trying to knock us backwards in time. Okay?
Yes.
The insurance industry, the medical profession, the pharmaceutical industry are our enemies.
They have been.
They have always been.
Yes.
And there is a group of chiropractors that want to prescribe drugs, and of course I'm not one of them, but there are some that want to. And we do use drugs in our practice, but we send them to our nurse practitioner for that. Okay, that's not chiropractic, that's something else, right? But there are, but I've said for years, if you want to get drugs in chiropractic, it's very simple. You go to the pharmaceutical industry and get them on your side because they're pay for it, because then they have, 25 or 30 or 40,000 more drug pushers in America. That's what they want.
Yes.
They would actually do it for you.
Yes.
They're a very powerful lobby. But
Yeah.
but that's not what this profession is. It's not what it started as. And that does not mean that we don't expand. It doesn't mean that we don't, when new technology comes in, when new forms of treatment come in, it doesn't mean we don't use them. Okay. For instance, the treatment that you worked on and that you've spread around the world, that treatment didn't exist when we went to school.
That's right.
Okay.
We didn't have a
But
DNA
now,
then. There was
exactly.
no DNS back then. That's right.
No, there was not. And it's absolutely fantastic and helps lots of people. And it's great that it's out there now. And you did a lot to spread that, obviously, more than anybody, really. But that's just one example. There are many examples of that.
Yes. It's grown. That's right. And there are those we have, for example, you mentioned Dr. Rob Jones. He's helped to promote and to add extra laws, new laws in New Mexico, to be able to gain some prescription rights for some
Correct.
chiropractors who are specially trained. And maybe that will continue. We don't know. But the idea is having if you have a group of chiropractors that team together, they can go and they can change laws and they can grow the profession, protect the profession, and expand the profession as they choose.
And I have no problem with that as long as they have the training. And that's their group. I don't believe in ever holding anybody down. For instance, the ultra straight chiropractors that believe that the second the first adjustment was given, chiropractic quit advancing and should never advance past that. Those people are in my opinion, very narrow-minded. Everything changes, knowledge changes. We know much more than we did in 1895. Okay, we know more about the body. We know more about all kinds of things, right? I also have an Oklahoma license. I've never practiced there. It's active. I keep it active. I actually took the Oklahoma boards before the Texas boards because Oklahoma would let you take the boards before you graduated from school in your last semester, but they wouldn't give you a license, obviously, till they received your diploma. So a bunch of us from the Texas school, TCC, went up there to take the boards as practice because this is before national boards, remember. Each state gave their own license. They gave their own test for that. And for instance, the Texas test was 2 days of written, 1 day of practical. Oklahoma was the same. So we went up there to practice it. And it was really good. It was very helpful, obviously, because they were a lot alike. But in Oklahoma, the Practice Act is much more expansive than the one in Texas.
Yes, that's right.
In Oklahoma, and now I haven't taken the certification courses, but if I practice there, I might not, I don't know. But they have prescriptive rights in Oklahoma with certain things.
Yes.
They can sign birth certificates and death certificates. Chiropractors can.
Yes.
They can, they can do a lot of things. I have a friend on the ACA that's an ACA delegate that practices in Kentucky, and he is what do you call a guy that does, when somebody dies and they send them there to do the autopsy and all that?
Mortician or
the oh man,
a forensic examiner?
No, he is all that stuff, but he does it for the county coroner. He's the county coroner in his county in Kentucky, and he's a chiropractor.
Wow,
now, that's interesting.
Yes,
that's very interesting, and he's done it for about 15 years now, and he's an ACA delegate from Kentucky. So that's kind of cool. That's a guy you ought to get on your podcast.
Yes,
that would be interesting.
Yes.
And as far as your podcasts, I've watched a bunch of them, and I did watch the one with De Silva and the one with your orthopedic buddy. I watched that one too, and they're both very good. I really like them. So, and very entertaining. I was going to tell you that. And
thank you so much. I appreciate that. was going to ask you another question. How would you integrate your training as an athlete and the habits that you learned to be in order to be able to be at a competitive elite level? How would you say that tied into your continued growth into a new profession as a chiropractor and your continuing role in leadership through your life? How did those kinds of habits, or do you feel that they were critical in helping to form your character, your personality?
Well, I think they were everything. The To get to a high level in anything, you have to be dedicated to that thing, whatever it is, especially athletics. Now, you do have to be born with athletic ability.
Yes.
That's one thing you cannot teach or learn. You
Right.
just can't. There are people that try, but it just doesn't work. So you have to have athletic ability, and that's God given. And then you have to have a work ethic, and the work ethic is it has to surround you. It has to engulf you. When I play golf, golf is all that mattered. I would hit balls every day. I would play every day I could. I hit balls in the rain and the snow. I would practice putting. I'd practice putting in the hotel rooms. You would do all kinds of things constantly, and it was in your mind 24 hours a day. If you were awake, you were thinking about it. And when I went on to become a chiropractor, it was the exact same thing. I've lectured for PSPS on practice building, Parker seminars back in the old days. I actually lectured at the same time for Parker seminars and Carl Parker seminars, which is kind of wild, but I did both of them at the same time. I lecture in Oklahoma all the time on practice building, and those are the things I teach. That you have to set a goal. You have to keep setting goals. You have to enlarge your goal. You have to have long-term goals, short-term goals, and that's the same thing with golf. And there's different parts of golf. You have a short game. You have a driver. You have your irons. You have your chipping, pitching, putting. You have to practice each one of them. Each one of them requires something different. It's the same thing in your practice. You have acquiring patients. What kind of patient? You have to be proficient in x-ray, physical therapy. You have to be proficient in working with people and talking to people. I built my practice on golf. I joined the country club way before I could afford to join a country club because it got me access to golfers. Golfers are a rare breed. They're a group of people that if you're a good golfer, which I was, I used to win everything locally around here. Okay. And and they want to hang around good golfers. Golfers want to hang around good golfers. So because I was a good golfer, automatically I was a good chiropractor. Well, that's not really true, but that's what people think. Because you're good at this, you're good at this. Well, that's not necessarily true. I hope I'm a good chiropractor. I think I am. My longevity, I think, proves that. But the two are so related, it's crazy. But it's true about anything, Craig. If you're going to excel, you have the same mannerisms, technique. It has to engulf you. It has to be the number one thing on your mind. I've actually told people that the most important things in the world are your religion, God, your family, and your practice. But you have to get your practice giant, you have to put your practice in front of everybody but God, because you can't put anything in front of him. But you have to put everything else in front of that. My practice allowed me to raise my family, in a nice house with pretty much anything they needed or wanted, et cetera, et cetera. But without that practice, that wouldn't have happened. And I missed a lot of things, as you did too, when you were first starting, because we worked all the time. For 35 years, I opened my practice at 7 in the morning and closed at 6 at night. So, and we still work Saturday mornings.
Yes.
And it's a zoo around here on Saturday morning.
Yes.
50, 60 patients every Saturday morning. It's wall to wall people because there's so many people that's the only day they can come in.
So I think I've mentioned it in a few other podcasts, but it comes back around when we talk about excellence in the fact that it just becomes a habit. And you can start it whenever you choose, even if you didn't grow up with excellence. You grew up with excellent habits, excellent instruction through your parents, and then also in your sport. But excellence in the end is a habit, and you can pick it up and grow with it anytime. And you also talked about talent. And you know that I worked on the PGA and the European tours, training patients and training golfers. And I worked with 25 of the top golfers in the world. And at one time, we had 3 of the major winners in our stable at the same time. And one of them had won the U.S. Open. And what was interesting, when I heard multiple people say the same thing at different times, sometimes you have you have compliments, and sometimes they're backhanded compliments. And what they would say about him is, that guy made the most out of his talent and his capacity of any golfer I know.
I know people like that.
And so, and I think, and by the way, and today, because you were coming on, you're a golfer, I wore my special golf shirt, which Jack Nicklaus gave me 15 years ago.
That's pretty good.
As a gift. And
by the way, the greatest golfer in history.
That's
for those that don't know.
There's something else we agree on, and we'll have to have a toast to him the next time we're together.
We will.
The great Duck. But excellence is a habit, and you have to try to make the most. And there's another saying that I like very much that says, if you're going to take the fruit, make sure you squeeze every drop. So
I like that.
So I think it's a good life motto, because essentially, if what was said about this one golfer that had won one of the 4 majors, the U.S. Open, and had a very successful career and multiple wins on the tour, then what he did was he squeezed the most drops. And so for each of us, we have to do our best. We have to try to be our best. And whatever talent we have, we need to apply it, because, there may be a little bit more juice in that fruit if we keep working hard enough. And so now I take that back to you. So you were a pro golfer. You were excellent in that. You became a chiropractor, and you became a leader in the profession, and excellent. You inspired one of your children to become a chiropractor and as a doctor, and now he's a leader in the Texas Chiropractic Association, even following your example. And then you even expanded after 4 decades in practice. You ended up then expanding and moved into a multidisciplinary. You didn't just stay within the profession, because you saw that there was potential and there was more that you could be doing. And even if you're not doing all of the treating, and you don't have the scope, and that's not your area of training, or that's even your area of interest clinically, but your interest is in the end, to help patients and to expand out where you saw the potential. And I think that this is a great life example. This is a great life example for young clinicians. And I don't think hopefully we have physical therapists, occupational therapists, physicians, young healthcare providers, and those that are in other areas that would listen to this, because we can replace in almost everything you've said here today. We could even replace the word chiropractic when we're talking about life's lessons. And so in the end, it's up to us to determine whether how we're going to apply it. It's up to us. When I first started in practice, I started with Dr. Vernon Cook's house, and he had graduated from chiropractic college in 1958. And he had this license plate on the back of his car. And he said, and it said, happiness is ... And I was very young and very naive. And I looked at that and I went to ask him, I said, well, why didn't you finish that? And he said, well, that's the point. He said,
It is the point.
he says, you have to, each of us has to fill it in. You have to complete that sentence for yourself. I just broached the topic. Each of us has to fill in, what is it that makes us excellent? What is it that makes us happy? And all of that, it's our opportunity. But here we have you, Dale, as an example of a fascinating history. And for me, I was inspired by you when we first met, because I remember you telling me, it's important that my patients always have access to me. So they always have my phone number and they always have access to me. Otherwise, I don't feel like I'm doing my job. I don't know if you're telling me that.
I still have my mobile number on my business cards.
Yes, and I still have that card from all these years, and it was so I thought about that, and I've always maintained my number because of your inspiration for that. So the patients could always have access to me in a hurry if they needed. And then I think we were the same, that we would see patients day or night. If they really needed us, we'd go in early, we'd stay late, come in on a weekend. I did that tons of times, and I have no doubt that you've done the same.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they needed.
And my son does the same. He saw it and he continued it.
That's right. That's the example. That's our job. Well, I would like to, in closing, I would like to thank you because of your example, because of your inspiration, for your inspiration and mentorship to me. Because in the end, even if we're colleagues or if we're a generation above, before us or after us, in the end, whether we're mentors, proteges, colleagues, we still teach each other. We learn from each other when we grow. And you've done that for me on multiple levels. And I really thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Greg. I appreciate it today.
And
So,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we'll do this again sometime.
I'd like to do that. I look forward to that again. And
All right.
everybody, we'll see you next time on Aces Optimist. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Aces Optimist Show. Catch you on the next one.